Hi, this is Bill from Cool Calc, and today we're going to go over the CoolCalc Scan Lidar app. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to the Apple Store and download the app. It works on iPhone Pro versions 12 and above or iPad Pro version 2020 or above. It does have to be a Pro version of either one of those devices, as the Pro version is the only one with the Lidar sensor. Once you've downloaded the app, you're going to want to log in with your CoolCalc credentials. I like to save the CoolCalc Scan app as well as a link to the CoolCalc web application on my iPad or iPhone just to make it easier to toggle back and forth. It is a separate app just for the scanning, and I'll talk a little bit about why we did that. The reason we did the separate app is we found that the scanning process is a lot faster when all you're doing is scanning and not necessarily performing the load calculation at the same time. More importantly, we also felt it gave flexibility to do the scans on an iPhone as opposed to an iPad. An iPad does have a much higher price point, and we felt that having the scan take place on an iPhone, you could make it more accessible, and people could do the scan and then open up and import the scan and do the rest of the load calc on a bigger device if they didn't want to do that on a phone. It also gives flexibility for the user that's performing the scan doesn't have to necessarily be the user that is performing the load calc. So you could have, if you're an HVAC company, you could have a technician capture scanning when on site, and then somebody more proficient with doing loads could complete the design back at the office. You could theoretically have a homeowner create a scan and send it to a contractor, and they can perform the scan remotely. So we felt that it gave a lot of flexibility as well as increased speed in a lower price point. And furthermore, the fact that we decoupled the scanning from the back-end calculations does give us more flexibility with implementing AI in the future and having, the front end be the scanning part and AI doing a lot on the back end. So you'll see more to come on that moving forward. But I'll switch back over to the iPad view. So once you open up the app, the first thing you're going to want to do is log into the application if you haven't done so. Once you log in with your CoolCalc web credentials, you're going to see a list of all your projects. You're going to see a icon called Scan Groups, and this is where you would have all of your scans that you've done. And then the last icon is just to log out. So it's very simple. It's really just your project list and your scans that are contained in this application. To start a scan, you're just going to click on the Scan Group app, and you're just going to want to click the plus button in the top right-hand corner to create a new scan group. And you can call this scan group whatever you'd like, Mr. Jones, and save it. So once you save it, you want to open up the scan group and you want to create a new scan. I'm going to play a video to show you what that scanning process looks like so you can get an idea, just because it's a little bit easier than me moving around right now in my setup. But this is what the scanning ultimately looks like. So the first thing the application is going to have you do is hold the phone or tablet and move it up and down, preferably in the corner of the room where you can see where the wall meets the floor and the floor and the wall meets the ceiling. And then once it gets its bearings, you just want to walk around and you'll see it highlighting in white everything that it detects. So the program detects not only walls, ceilings, floors, but it also detects furniture, it detects windows, wall openings, exterior doors, and it creates this 3D model. So from a privacy standpoint, it's important to note that this is Apple's technology, this is not CoolCalc's technology, so none of this imagery is ever saved on our servers. What Apple does is it takes the actual real live imagery and instantly converts it to the 3D model you see at the bottom here. So from a privacy standpoint, rest assured we're not gathering any, live video on people's homes. The only thing that is being captured and imported into CoolCalc is that 3D model that's kind of agnostic of imagery at the bottom. When you're going around the house, there's a couple pro tips. The application, it can either be done where you scan each room one at a time, or it can be done where you just continuously go around like you see in this video here. I prefer to have every time there's a clean breakpoint where, and not every house is this way, but anytime there's a clean breakpoint between a wall, I should say a room being totally enclosed, meaning all four walls form a room, I would stop at that point, save it, name it, and move on to the next room. If there's no clean breakpoint, because it's an open concept living room, kitchen area, you're going to want to try to do that whole thing continuously and then move on to the next room. I'm going to stop this one for a second, and I'm going to go over to back to the iPad view here. I'm going to show you some of the scans that I've done so you can get a feel for what they look like and what's important. So this is a scan that I did of my home just a few minutes ago, and I decided to break it up into the first floor into the rooms you see here. So the guest bedroom, mudroom, kitchen, living room was one big area. So I decided to scan that all as one. And then there was a few other ones that I did. When you open up the scan to look at it, you can review and see what the 3D model is. When I mentioned it's important that it's a closed room, if it has no wall on one side or is completely open, more than likely it's going to fail when it gets imported into CoolCalc. If it's a completely enclosed room, like this was a guest bedroom with an ensuite, you can see it detected a closet door, a window, a door going into a bathroom, and then the exterior door. So that's what I would call a clean scan. Same thing when I go into, say, like an office area, that this is pretty clean. It has door opening, two windows, and a closet in the back. It is important to open up closets and scan inside of them. If you don't do that, you're going to end up with voids in the scan. The one that I did that was the most complicated was this kitchen, living room, dining area. This one I decided to do in one continuous scan, and there was a couple challenges. It took me 2 tries to get this right, and I'll tell you the tips that I found that made it better. The part that I did by accident the first time that made it not work is right in the center here. One of these openings goes into an open foyer, and I didn't really get the ceiling around the opening, and it just was a total void in the wall. And that it didn't like it when it tried to import that. I'll try to pull up what that looked like. And also the staircase, the staircase right in that you can see going up that taller area on the left-hand side of the screen, I didn't scan the back wall of that staircase, so that had a void too. So because I didn't have a continuous polygon all the way around, it didn't necessarily import properly. Let me see if I can find the first one that I did with the first floor. So you can kind of see in this back area, there's a void in the wall. That's what caused it not to import properly. I would recommend doing your own house, testing it a little bit, and getting the hang of it. Once you do it a couple times, you'll know what to look for, and the process moves pretty smoothly. Once you're done scanning all of your rooms, the first thing you're going to want to do is click Combine Scans if you did multiple scans. And then you're going to want to name it something like First Floor. And you're going to want to check off all of the scans that you want to include in that level and hit Save. So what you're going to want to do here is, if you haven't created a project already, you're going to want to go open up your web application of CoolCalc, either on your iPad or iPhone or on a desktop. I'm just on a desktop right now. I'm going to create a project. I'm just going to call it Lidar demo. I can put in an address. I can click proceed. I can just say I want to configure one system. It's the downstairs system. And it's going to be, I'll just say two above grade stories, no attic, with a basement, frame wall, one fireplace, built in 2022. I'll accept my construction default, and then I'm going to get to my dimensions. So when I get to dimensions, now it's all set and ready to go. So I'm going to go back to my iPad, and I'm going to click publish to CoolCalc. I'm going to publish the merge scan that I created, and I'm going to publish it to the project I just created called Lidar Demo, and I'm going to click publish. As soon as I do that, you're going to see a message at the bottom saying it was successfully uploaded. I'm going to go back to my desktop, and I'm going to click on Lidar Scan, and you're going to see level 1 that I just imported is ready to apply to my project. It just needs me to map it to the appropriate level on my project. So I set up my project as a basement with 2 levels. For the basement, I didn't scan it. I'm just going to click use the footprint above, and then I'm going to import level 1 and map it to level 1 and apply it to my project. Before I do that, there also is a button at the top called upload a scan. One of the things that we allow you to do, which is pretty cool, if I go back to the web app and you click the publish button in the top right corner, it's the middle icon right next to the plus icon. If you click that, you'll see a couple different options. One of them is called web export. That's where somebody other than the person doing the actual load wanted to do a scan and send it to you, they can do that. So that could be something where, again, homeowner has an iPhone Pro, they download CoolCalc Scan for free, they do their own scan, they export it as a file and email it to a contractor. That contractor can then perform that design, which is a pretty neat feature to have. So that's what that, and then what the contractor would do is when they go back over to the desktop, they would click upload a scan and they would pick that file from their desktop. So let's just map this one right now to level 1. The scans are never going to come in perfect. What we want to try to do is get most of the room geometry there, but there's always going to be a little bit of cleanup that has to get done on this. We take that proprietary 3D model that Apple generates and we turn it into a 2D floor plan for a number of reasons. We think it's easier to interact with a 2D floor plan, and certainly later when we get into things like duct design, we feel like it's easier to interact there. So this is where I'd probably, this staircase that it started to pick up half of, I'd probably come in here and delete that. You just click on the walls and you can click delete. Apple detects a lot of openings, even though there's no doors there, as interior doors. So I'm just going to delete that. And this is a door going down to the basement. I'm just going to delete on the floor plan as well. This was an opening here. So we are trying to make some improvements where we don't import these doors at all in an upcoming release. If it does anything like a oddball wall or anything like that, you can click and delete those as well. Sometimes if it's too small of a wall, you have to drag it to make it a little bit bigger in order to delete that. The other thing that I like to do is if you want to separate a room that's big into multiple smaller spaces, this is where the open space divider is helpful. You can come in and you can separate, say, this kitchen area and maybe this living room area into separate rooms, which is helpful to do that. Get rid of this door as well. If there is no solid wall and it really is open, you probably do want to delete those and again add dividers as opposed to solid walls. That will be, if you're just doing manual J, it's really not relevant. But if you're doing duct design, it is, because anywhere where there's dashed lines means airflow can flow. When there's a solid wall, it means it can't. So it plays into some of our logic when we're sizing returns. All right, so you can also edit it directly on the iPad. So if I open up the CoolCalc web application and I went to my first floor, I can open it up here. Now, when you're editing on an iPad, there's a couple tricks. To actually pan, you have to use 2 fingers to move around. The other thing I highly recommend is to get an Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil, and I'll see if I can show you what this looks like. But when you have the Apple Pencil, one of the nice things that it does is it has a hover feature. So I'm not touching the iPad right now, but I can see exactly what I'm about to click on by hovering over it, which is kind of a nice feature. You can click on the various things. You can edit stuff like windows right on the iPad Pro. If you want to edit something, I can click on the wall and I can click the delete icon at the bottom. I can also edit walls by dragging them. I can remove or add additional dividers. So if I wanted to, for example, delete this wall here and go with a open space divider between there and there, I can do that. Click the stop button. So it is definitely easier to draw on an iPad with the pencil. You can do it with your finger, but I've found the experience to be not ideal. A lot better with the pencil. So that's it for our initial video on how to use the Lidar scanning app. Thank you. Have a good day.